They used to say space was the final frontier, but for humanity, it became something else entirely. An unspoken warning. No treaty, no galactic law, no coordinated command ever declared human space off-limits. It just happened. The stars near Sol dimmed in maps. Trade routes curved around it. Species that used to pride themselves on fearlessness quietly erased coordinates that led to Earth and its surrounding colonies. And no one talked about why. Out in the Perseid cluster, where 3 suns scorched the edge of the Orion Arm, Captain Hurek of the Krivanth Dominion paused mid-charting. His 6-fingered hand trembled slightly above the console. "Do not approach Sector H09, the AI murmured, its usually calm tone clipped and low. "Reason?" Hurek asked, knowing the answer before it came. "Unexplained disappearances, 0 confirmed survivors, human territory." That last phrase did it. Hurek closed the file without further question. No need to investigate. Everyone knew better, even if no one admitted it. Meanwhile, on the Terran ship Valkyrie Dawn, orbiting the burnt remains of what used to be a Zellery scout fleet, Commander Aisha Mendez stood at the edge of her bridge. The debris shimmered in the black void, jagged with ion scorch and twisted metal, unrecognizable except for the melted emblem of the Zellari High Command. One of the most advanced species in the quadrant, reduced to slag within minutes. She sipped from her mug. "They never learn," she muttered. Lieutenant Reyes looked up from the weapons panel. "That's the 4th one this cycle. No hails, no surrender, just charged right in." Aisha nodded. "Same pattern. Scan, breach, threat display, then silence." "And they still don't tell each other," Reyes added. "Whole galaxy of telepaths and data leechers, and they act like we're the unknown." "Let them," Aisha said. Her voice had that weight, cold, calm, and final. Back in the diplomatic chambers of the Ganeth Confederation, the ruling elders met in secret. Their spindly antennae twitched in fear as Ambassador Darul played the last recording retrieved from a long-range probe. Screams, followed by static, then a human voice, calm, crisp. "This is Terran Defense Command. You have breached restricted space. Leave or be cleansed." Cleansed. That word. No translation made it less chilling. Elder Sharn leaned forward. It was a reconnaissance ship, unarmed. They gave no warning. Darul tapped the console. "They don't need to. The warning is the silence that follows." So the Ganeth added another red stripe to their star charts. One more voided zone bordering human space. And just like the Krivanth and Zellari, they stopped asking questions. But questions burned on the lips of one being. A journalist. Half human, half Ilari hybrid, named Kael Voss. He'd been raised in the neutral zones, away from Earth and its fire-soaked name. And he wasn't afraid. Or maybe he was too angry to be. "My father died trying to save humans," he told his editor. "And no one talks about what happened. I'm going in." "Kael," the editor said, her eyes narrowing like slits. "You won't come back. You know that." "I don't want to come back," he said. "I want the truth." And so Kael boarded his ship, charted a course toward Sector H09, and crossed a line most wouldn't dare approach. The moment he entered human space, his sensors died. No signal, no response, just the blackness of space, cold and endless. And in that silence, something ancient stirred. The human voice returned. "State your purpose," Kael smiled bitterly. "To learn what made the galaxy fear you." There was a pause. Then the voice replied, "Then come closer." And the stars went dark behind him. The darkness wasn't just visual. It felt like it seeped into Kael's bones. Space had never felt so still, so void. Even in the emptiest regions of the galaxy, there was always something. Faint radiation, a flicker from a dying star. comms chatter bouncing from probe to satellite. But here, it was like reality had been muted. His ship's instruments were dead, not malfunctioning, dead. No lights blinked, no numbers fluctuated. Even the emergency backups, shielded and isolated, refused to respond. Kyle tried rebooting them manually, but it was like pressing buttons on a corpse. And yet, the ship moved. It glided, smooth and steady, as if pulled by invisible hands. Kyle couldn't even control the thrusters anymore. He was no longer the pilot, just a passenger on his own vessel. "Manual override engaged," he muttered, tapping the side of the console. No response. He leaned back in his seat and whispered to himself, "They're watching me." A screen flickered, just once. Kyle leaned in. A shadow passed across the display. Too fast to capture, too vague to identify. Humanoid. Or perhaps not. It was gone before he could blink. Then came the sound. It started as a hum. Low, deep, felt in his chest more than heard with ears. It grew steadily until the ship itself vibrated, like something ancient was whispering in frequencies too old for life to understand. Kyle stood, stumbling as the deck plates trembled beneath him. Suddenly, a white light burst from the starboard window. He shielded his eyes. When the glare faded, he saw it. A station, not orbiting any planet, just hovering in the void, massive and ominous. Black metal spires stretched outward like jagged arms, and at the center sat a glowing core, pulsing like a heart. It wasn't Terran-made, at least not any human technology Cale had seen in the archives, yet the ship moved toward it, dragged like a leaf in a current. His comm crackled to life. Static. Then the voice again. "You are the first outsider to be allowed this far." Kyle leaned in. "Why? Why now?" No answer. Just a soft chime. A corridor on the station lit up. His ship docked seamlessly, locking into place with a hiss. "Exit," the voice said. Kyle hesitated. "What happens if I don't?" "You've already chosen." He stepped out. The docking corridor was sterile, lit by a pale glow that offered no warmth, no guards, no signs, no direction. Just silence. He walked forward. As he entered the main chamber, the architecture stunned him. The walls were etched with images. Wars, collapses, faces twisted in rage and fear. All humans. Battles fought not with aliens, but among themselves. Civil wars, mass genocides, viral outbreaks, the worst of humanity, frozen in black stone. A single line was etched beneath each mural. "They feared us before they understood us." Kyle turned a corner and came face to face with something impossible. A human. Not just any human. A child. She stood barefoot on the steel floor, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Pale skin, blank eyes, and yet, when she spoke, her voice echoed like thunder. "They don't fear us because of what we do to them. They fear what we do to each other." Kyle froze. "Who are you?" "I'm the archive," she replied. "I remember everything." He blinked. "Everything?" "Every war, every betrayal, every act of mercy, every broken promise, every lie told for peace, and every truth spoken for war. I'm what remains of what you call Earth." Kale stepped closer. "Then tell me, why do they vanish? Why does no one return?" She tilted her head. "Because we show them who they really are." He frowned. "I don't understand." "You will." And the walls lit up, projecting memories not just of Earth, but of alien civilizations who had dared to enter human space. Their leaders, their soldiers, their scholars. All of them shown versions of themselves they had hidden, insecurities, crimes, regrets. They hadn't been attacked. They had been confronted, and most couldn't bear it. "They look into the mirror," the girl said softly, "and what they see breaks them." Kyle staggered. "You're saying Humans didn't kill them. She smiled. We didn't have to. Kyle stood frozen in that sterile chamber, the glow from the murals casting shadows across his face. His mind struggled to grasp the magnitude of what the child, the archive, had just revealed. Entire species had entered human space, not to fight, not to conquer, but to learn. And they were destroyed not by weapons, but by revelation, by their own reflections. But how? Kale asked, his voice barely a whisper. How do you show them their darkest selves? The archive tilted her head, her eyes distant, as if reaching into something far beyond the present moment. Every species carries a frequency, Kale. Not just sound or light, but thought, memory, emotion. We learn to decode it, to bend it, to reflect it. You weaponized memory, Kale muttered. Weaponized trauma. She shook her head. We illuminated it. What they did with that truth was always their choice. Kyle walked slowly down the chamber, past more etchings and frozen holograms. One depicted a species with crystalline skin collapsing in front of a projection of its own genocide. Another showed a warrior caste race reduced to wailing children as their conquests were replayed back to them, moment by bloody moment. His stomach turned. This isn't justice. It's psychological annihilation. The archive walked beside him, barefoot, silent except for the sound of her voice in his mind. Justice is a myth in space, Kyle. There is only revelation. We gave the galaxy what it never gave us, truth. Kyle stopped in front of an image, one that chilled him more than the others. It was of humans, kneeling, screaming, killing each other, nuclear flames in the distance. And one phrase etched in flawless English. Before we reached the stars, we destroyed ourselves. Kyle turned. So what changed? How did humanity become this? The child blinked. Pain. Enough to remember, and more than enough to forget. As she spoke, a new projection unfolded. A memory not from another species, but from Earth's own past. A time of chaos, ecological collapse, plagues, wars that spanned generations, billions dead, but also moments of impossible beauty, strangers risking their lives to save others, leaders choosing peace over pride, a child singing amid rubble. You see, she whispered, we burned, and in the ashes we learned. We chose to know everything about ourselves, to embrace even the filthiest truth, so no one else could ever use it against us. Kyle swallowed hard. And you're telling me, when other species come here, you show them what they refuse to see in themselves. The archive nodded slowly. And that is what truly breaks them. Kyle backed away, breath shallow. Then why am I still here? Why haven't you shown me? She looked up at him with piercing stillness. Because you're part human, and you already suspect what you'll see. A long silence followed. Then, without warning, the room darkened, and Kyle was alone. Except he wasn't. A mirror appeared in front of him, simple, old, cracked at the edges. But what he saw wasn't just his reflection. It was a flood. Memories, both his and not his. His father's last breath as he pleaded with a human ship to stand down. His mother's silence. His own bitterness. His desire not for truth but vengeance. And then others. Acts he'd never committed, but had thought of. Moments he'd buried deep under anger and purpose. Every lie he told. Every cowardly silence. Every selfish reason behind his noble quest. He fell to his knees. His voice shook. Stop. Please. The archive appeared again, her hand outstretched. But she didn't touch him. She just said, You asked to know what made the galaxy fear us. Now you do. We don't kill them. We make them face what they run from. Kyle sobbed, his forehead pressed to the cold floor. And then she whispered the final blow. You don't need to fear monsters, Kyle. You are one. Kyle didn't know how long he stayed on the floor, trembling. Time didn't seem to exist in this place, not as it did in the rest of the universe. Here, moments stretched, bent, collapsed under the weight of memories that didn't feel like they belonged solely to him, yet pierced his soul like they'd always been waiting. When he finally lifted his head, the mirror was gone. The girl, the archive, stood quietly, her expression unreadable. "You broke me," Kyle whispered. "No," she replied, her voice almost tender. "You were always broken. I just showed you where the cracks were." He stood slowly, each movement feeling heavier than the last. His body hadn't changed, but his spirit felt older, raw, exposed. "What now?" he asked. "What happens to me?" "That depends," she said, leading him down another corridor, one bathed in blue light instead of the clinical white. "Most don't make it this far. Most implode from the reflection. You survived. That makes you dangerous." "Dangerous?" Kyle scoffed, voice hoarse. "I can barely stand." "That's why," she said. "Because now you understand." The corridor opened into a new chamber, much larger, circular, like a dome. In the center stood a spire of pulsing light, wrapped in thousands of small metallic strands that seemed to hum in resonance with every breath he took. "What is that?" he asked. "Our memory," she replied. "Not just human memory. Everything. Every species that entered. Every story. Every thought." Kale stepped closer. He could feel it. Energy, knowledge, pain, wisdom. It vibrated beneath his skin. If he touched it, he somehow knew. He'd understand more than he'd ever wanted to. "This is why no one returns," he said quietly. "Because they can't." "They choose not to," she corrected. "Some are offered return. Most decline. A few, very few, become part of this place. They help guard the truth." He turned to her. "Are you offering me that?" She didn't answer. Instead, another figure stepped into the room. A man, human, middle-aged, with eyes so piercing Kale felt like they saw through time. "Who?" The man smiled faintly. "Welcome, Kale. I'm Commander Jonas Hale. I once captained the Valiant Star, long before this station ever had a name." Kale's mouth went dry. The Valiant Star was a legend, a ghost ship, a Terran vessel that vanished a century ago on a deep exploration mission. Every race had a different theory: wormhole, betrayal, alien sabotage. None guessed it had come here. "You're alive?" Kale asked. "In a way," Jonas said. "I was shown the truth. I stayed. The galaxy doesn't need more soldiers, Kyle. It needs historians, witnesses, ones who've faced themselves and still chose to bear the weight of others." Kyle felt the burden of that offer, like chains wrapping around him. "You want me to become part of this archive?" "You're free to leave," Jonas said. "We don't imprison. That would make us like them." Kale looked back at the spire. "And if I stay, then you will never see the stars the same again," the girl answered. "You'll see truth in every orbit, lies in every peace treaty, pain in every silence. But you'll also learn how to stop pretending." Kyle looked down at his hands, trembling, changed. He'd come here looking for answers, for justice, maybe even to expose human cruelty to the galaxy. Instead, he'd found a mirror too honest to shatter. He wasn't sure if he was still Kale Voss, or something less, or more. "I need to know one thing," he said, voice brittle. "Why did my father die? He begged for peace. The ship he was on was unarmed." Jonas's face darkened. "Because the truth doesn't care about intention. When he crossed into our space, the archive saw into his soul, and he couldn't accept it." Kale stared, the weight of that truth anchoring him to the floor. Then the archive's voice cut softly through the air. Would you like to see what he saw? Kyle didn't answer. He simply stepped forward. The air inside the chamber thickened as Kyle stepped closer to the spire. It wasn't fear that slowed his feet. It was something heavier, dread maybe, or truth, coiled like a serpent in his gut, waiting to strike. Behind him, the Archive and Jonas Hale stood in silence, not urging, not warning, just watching. Kyle lifted his hand. The moment his fingertips brushed the spire, the world fractured. He wasn't in the chamber anymore. He was floating, bodiless, inside a memory that wasn't his, but somehow was. The sensation was overwhelming. He could feel the pulse of it, rage, regret, terror, rippling through his very bones. Then the memory sharpened into focus. He was aboard a diplomatic cruiser, sleek, clean, flying toward human territory. On the bridge stood a man he recognized instantly, even though he had only known him through faded hollows. His father, Admiral Rin Voss, a man revered in neutral circles as a peacemaker, a philosopher in uniform, a man Kale had grown up idolizing. Here, though, his face was drawn, tired, and in his eyes burned something Kale had never seen in any archive image: desperation. "We'll force contact," Rin was saying, pacing. "They have to listen. They can't just close their space off forever." "But sir," an aide replied, "the Terrans have made it clear." "They've made nothing clear," Rin snapped. "They hide behind silence, fear. It's cowardice, not strength." Kyle's stomach turned. He watched as his father authorized the jump, straight into restricted human territory. No warning, no clearance, just defiance. Another cut in the memory. Now Rin stood in a darkened room, alone. The cruiser had docked, somehow. His crew, gone. No trace, no bodies, just emptiness. He stood before a wall of light, a mirror, the same kind Kale had seen. And it had begun. Kale felt the scream before he heard it. His father dropped to his knees, his face contorted in horror. No, I didn't mean, that wasn't." Images spilled from the mirror. His father, as a young officer, ordering a retreat that abandoned civilians, approving a strike that killed innocents to preserve tactical advantage, signing away entire populations to appease power-hungry politicians, and every time, telling himself it was for peace, 1,000 small lies, each one told with noble intentions, but lies all the same. "I was trying to stop war," Rin whispered. "I did what I had to." The mirror didn't respond. It just showed more. A woman crying in the dark, holding a child whose face Kyle suddenly recognized, his own, and Rin, walking away. Kyle gasped. He hadn't expected that. He hadn't expected to see the cowardice not just in war, but in love, in fatherhood, in the man who left to chase peace while his family withered in silence. The memory began to collapse. Kyle felt himself being pulled back, his heart thudding like a war drum. He landed hard on the floor of the chamber, gasping for air. The spire dimmed. "You see now," Jonas said gently. Kyle wiped tears from his face. He hadn't even realized he was crying. He wasn't a hero. No, the archive said, walking to him. But he wasn't a monster either, just a man who couldn't live with the price of truth. Kyle sat in stunned silence. His entire life, he'd fought to vindicate his father, to blame humanity for his death. But now he understood. His father hadn't been killed. He'd been undone. "It's not fair," Kyle muttered. "No," Jonas agreed. "It's not. But truth never is." Kyle stood slowly, his limbs weak but steady. "What do I do with this?" The archive smiled softly. "You decide. Do you carry the truth back to the stars? Or do you stay and help others face theirs?" Kyle looked at the spire, at the mirrored walls, at the weight of 1,000 civilizations in one silent space. Then he turned to her, and for the first time, he didn't ask a question. He gave an answer. Cale's answer wasn't spoken aloud. He simply walked past the spire and stood beside the archive. The decision was etched on his face, a silent resignation to a path he hadn't known existed until now. He would stay. He would become part of the archive. Jonas Hale nodded slightly, as if he had expected this all along. "Then we begin," he said. "You'll need to be rebuilt." Kegel blinked. "Rebuilt?" "Not your body," the archive clarified. "Your mind. You can't carry the truths of the galaxy without reinforcement. Most collapse under the weight of just one species. You'll carry thousands." Kyle's mouth went dry. "That sounds like madness." "It is," Jonas replied. "But it's also clarity." The room began to shift. Walls peeled back like petals of some mechanical flower, revealing chambers deeper within the station, pulsing with light, alive with whispers Kyle couldn't quite decipher. He followed without question. There was no fear now, just inevitability. They entered a chamber that felt colder than the others, not in temperature, but in memory. It was darker, older. The walls here were smoother, more polished, as if even the past respected the sacredness of this place. A single chair sat in the center. Jonas gestured. "Sit." Kyle obeyed. From the ceiling descended a crown-like apparatus. It hovered above his head, humming with soft electric life. "You'll be shown the archive," the girl said. "Not just the stories, the emotions, the secrets never confessed, the thoughts never said, the deaths that didn't make it into records. You'll know them all." "And if I can't take it?" Cale asked, voice thin. "Then your body sleeps forever," Jonas said plainly. "But your mind becomes another silent page in the book." The crown descended. Pain was not the word for what came next. It was a storm, a scream, a flood of agony that wasn't physical but emotional. The anguish of entire species poured into him. Fear, guilt, rage, despair. He saw the minds of the Krevanth generals breaking when they realized their empire was built on millennia of false history. He felt the Ganeth child, barely 5 cycles old, watching its planet burn because its leaders thought silence would buy safety. He lived the final thoughts of a Zalari philosopher, realizing in her last moment that her teachings of superiority were the very chains that doomed her people. And then came the human memories. So many. Too many. Wars, betrayals, the slow erasure of hope in endless cycles of rebuilding and collapse, the cries of the innocent, the blood of the forgotten, but also acts of impossible grace. A mother hiding her enemy's child, a soldier refusing to fire, a rebel giving his last breath to save a city that hated him. Kyle screamed, not in pain, but in revelation. He was more than Kyle now. He was part of something massive, unforgiving, eternal. The chair released him. The crown lifted, and he opened his eyes. He was still himself. But now he knew. The archive stood before him, her eyes gleaming not with pride, but with solemn understanding. "You survived." Kyle nodded. Jonas placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are now a keeper, a guardian of memory." Kyle exhaled slowly. "What do I do first?" The archive led him to a wall that looked like blank obsidian, but as he approached, it shimmered. A name appeared, Kyle Voss, and beneath it, Witness. "You watch," she said softly. "You wait, and when another comes, seeking what you sought, you show them." Kyle looked at the wall, at the infinite names etched beside his own. Some he recognized, most he didn't. But they were family now, truth keepers, the silent ones, the ones the galaxy feared, not because of power, but because they had seen too much and had survived it. Time had no meaning within the archive. It didn't tick forward. It unfolded, layer by layer, like a never-ending book constantly writing itself. Kale lost track of days, of weeks, maybe years. He stopped counting after the first 100 entries he processed. Each memory, each story from a forgotten species or silenced soldier was absorbed into him like breath. He was no longer Cale Voss in the way the galaxy had once known him. Out there, he was a vanished hybrid, a half-breed journalist foolish enough to wander into Terran space. Inside, though, he was something more, a living bridge between truth and silence. He walked the halls of the station with reverence now, reading murals that once haunted him, whispering back the stories they etched. But then, something changed. One day, or whatever passed for a day, he was summoned by the archive. She had not aged, not one wrinkle, still a barefoot child with galaxy-heavy eyes. Yet Cale knew her mood the moment he stepped into the chamber. She was unsettled. "There's a ship," she said. Kyle stiffened. "Alien?" "Number human." That word hit different now. Kyle had seen humans in their rawest forms, saviors and monsters, dreamers and destroyers. But no one had entered the archive from Earth in decades, maybe longer. "Why?" he asked. "They're not seeking truth," the archive replied. "They're looking for power." Kyle's blood went cold. He walked to the nearest viewing chamber. The ship hovered just outside the archive's veil, an invisible energy curtain that kept most away. It bore the mark of a private Terran corporation, sleek, military-grade, and armed. "Private sector," Cale muttered. "Earth's gone corporate." Jonas appeared behind him, his eyes hard. They must have picked up a signal, a lost probe, maybe, or someone finally got curious enough. "They won't survive," Kyle said. Jonas didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned toward the archive. "They're not the same humans we were. These are born into screens, lies, and noise. They consume truth only to sell it back watered down. What they find here, it won't break them like before. It'll tempt them." Kyle turned, alarmed. "You're saying they might survive? They might try to steal us." The archive nodded gravely. "And if they do, everything changes. The archive isn't just truth, it's leverage, data that can collapse governments or start wars." Kyle's chest tightened. "Then we stop them." "Not yet," she said. "We watch." And so they did. The Terran vessel breached the veil within hours. It didn't hesitate, didn't request permission. It just moved in, direct, precise, like a blade to the heart. Kyle stood in the main chamber, watching them dock. A crew of 4, all human. 2 men, 2 women. Clean uniforms, cold eyes. Their leader was a man named Commander Bryce Tannen. Cale knew his type. Slick, confident, the kind who smiled before they stabbed. Tannen stepped onto the archive's platform, scanning the chamber with casual arrogance. "Looks abandoned," he said, voice echoing. "Patch me in, Haley." One of the officers tapped her wrist. "Nothing. The place is dead tech. Ancient. But there's some power flow. We could reroute it." Cale felt a shift in the air. The archive appeared, not as a child, but as an adult now. Still barefoot, still silent, but taller, stronger. The form she rarely used. The one meant to intimidate. Tannen froze. "Well, that's new." "You've trespassed," she said, her voice echoing like the chorus of the dead. Tannen smirked. "We're not here to steal anything, just research." Jonas stepped forward from the shadows. "Truth isn't something you can mine. It's something you survive." Tannen turned. "And who the hell are you?" Cale finally emerged. "The last one who walked in with questions and lived to carry the answers," he said coldly. The room fell silent. Tannen's eyes narrowed. "You're Cale Voss. You disappeared. We thought you died." Cale smiled bitterly. "I did. The man you knew doesn't exist anymore." Tannen stepped forward. "Then maybe it's time we bring you home. There are people who'd pay a lot to hear what you've learned." Kyle stared at him. then said quietly, "I'd rather die again." The archive moved forward, but it was Kyle who raised a hand. "Let me," he said. "Let me show them." The archive nodded once, and the walls began to glow. The glow from the walls pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and ominous. The air thickened, as if the archive itself was holding its breath. Commander Tannen and his crew looked around with growing unease, their polished confidence cracking ever so slightly. Kyle watched them carefully. He knew what was coming, and he knew not all of them would survive it. "This is your last chance," Kyle said, his voice calm but resolute. "You can walk away. Leave now, and forget this place ever existed." Tannen scoffed. "You think a few lights and spooky voices scare me? We've faced black holes and pirate kings. We've broken through war fronts that make this place look like a museum." Kyle didn't flinch. "You've broken through everything except yourselves." Then the archive began. It started subtle, faint whispers brushing past the ears of the intruders. Personal, specific. Tannen stiffened as he heard a voice he hadn't heard in years, his brother's, who'd died by suicide after a betrayal Tannen had buried deep beneath justifications and promotions. Officer Haley gasped. A child's laugh echoed through the chamber. Her daughter, born in secret and surrendered at birth for her career. A choice she claimed never haunted her. Until now. One by one, they unraveled. Visions surrounded them. Shadows of memory dancing across the walls, pulling secrets from their minds like thread from old fabric. Not grand sins, but quiet, poisonous ones. Lies told to lovers. Compromises made for ambition. The kind of darkness that lives in the corners of the soul. Tannen staggered forward, fists clenched, eyes wild. "This is manipulation." "No," Kale said softly. "This is honesty." The youngest of the crew, a man barely 30, fell to his knees, sobbing. "Make it stop. Please. I didn't mean to leave him. I thought he'd be fine." The archive stepped beside him and gently laid a hand on his shoulder. "You are not being punished. You are being seen." Haley tried to run, but the chamber shifted around her, not locking her in, but showing her every door she'd ever slammed shut on people who loved her. Tannen was the last to break. He stood, eyes bloodshot, trembling. But his pride was iron. "You think you've beaten me? You think this'll stop me from telling the world what's here?" "You won't," Kale said. "Why not?" Kyle stepped closer, nose to nose with the man. "Because the moment you leave, you'll carry this with you. Every breath, every night you close your eyes, you'll see this place. Not just what you did. What you are." Tannen's defiance flickered. "I'll forget. I'll bury it." "You'll try," Kale said, "and it will rot you." Silence fell again. The archive turned to Kale. "Should they leave?" He looked at the broken crew, haunted, hollowed, no longer the same people who entered. "Yes," Kale said. "Let them carry the burden. Let them be the warning." With a motion from the archive, the veil parted. Their ship was intact. Systems reactivated. The survivors, silent, shattered, boarded without a word. Tannen paused at the ramp, looking back at Kale. For a moment, there was something like apology in his eyes. Then he turned and disappeared into the ship. As they left, the veil closed once more. The archive turned to Kale. "You did well." "They'll spread stories," he said. "Maybe twisted, maybe true. But the galaxy will talk again." Jonas joined them. "Let them. Maybe fear will keep them honest." Kale stared at the stars beyond the station, cold and brilliant. "No species enters human space," he said quietly, "because they've seen what happens." And now, more would, but not from destruction, from truth, terrifying, unfiltered, and inescapable. In the silence of space, sometimes the loudest scream, is a mirror.